It's not what leads to the best meaningful relationship. It's not about like what is the best interest to bond over. Or it's not about any of that. What it's solely about is when you open a dating app and you see the list of profiles on your matchmaking page, what is going to best pique your interest? What is essentially the best first presentation you're making to the person? That's what this debate is ultimately about. Because matching is not the long-term conversation. It's not any of that. Matching is what is going to pique your interest, start a conversation, and get invested in that person and have a personal vested interest. Here's why music taste is what fulfills that the best. And you can expect three flashes rather from the speech. I first want to talk about the purpose of the initial match and why Spotify is best for that initial match. Then I'm going to talk about the uniqueness of Spotify, because I'm sure in their next few speeches they're going to talk mostly about how Spotify is unique. You can look at other hobbies, so I'll address that. And then finally, I'm going to address the cultural aspect, how ultimately changes to Spotify will uniquely change the dating culture online. Let's start with that first flash. Why is it going to better improve the initial match? There's two main reasons that Isaac talked about in his first speech that was never addressed by opposition. The issue with the status quo, with the traditional dating algorithms, is that the conversations are either often too shallow or too deep, right? The too shallow example. Yes, maybe you could be creative and extend conversations about walking your dog, but there becomes a point where it's like, okay, if all we bond over is like our first job was at McDonald's and we like walking dogs, like you have to have something more substantive at some point there. And it's a lot harder to have a vested interest and to really be invested in the conversation. Like, essentially what I'm trying to get at here is that, yes, you can be creative with the conversation, but if I'm being honest, I don't really care about a conversation about how I like walking my dogs. Like, I don't have a personal attachment to it, even though that was my first job. What I actually have to have is some sort of personal connection to the other person, or a personal connection over the topic we're talking about. But the flip side is also that. Like, no one is going to talk about intense theology or like their political views as their first ever conversation. Like if I matched with someone on a dating app and I was just like, hey, what are your thoughts on like the newly elected mayor of our city? And you're just like, when it's like his intricate policies, they probably think you're a little weird and block you, because even if you agree on it, it's not the first conversation starter. So what we have to find is that middle ground. What is a personal topic? What's something personal to the person that's also easy and accessible to talk about? That's where music taste comes in. That's where Spotify is unique, because unlike any other hobby, unlike any other personal view or anything like that, Spotify is accessible and easy to talk about. You're talking about the album, the artist, what you like about the lyrics, what you like about it sonically. That's what Spotify ultimately offers in that sense. So what we also have to see too is that I feel like there's been a little bit of mischaracterization about how this actually looks in terms of mechanization. Because how it would work ideally is you're matched off the Spotify profile, but that doesn't mean that like the Spotify is the only thing on their profile, right? You can still like type out your bio on your page, you can still like put like how old you are, your interests, but the point is that you're being matched only based off of Spotify. I think that's just a clarification that's pretty relevant. I'll take your point.
I still don't understand are you on your case supporting people who are lazy and don't want to talk about the conversations and don't want to think about other conversation topics by themselves and pushing this narrative of, hey, here is music, listen to it and you will match with someone?
I guess I would just ask, like, how are you supposed to know what you're going to talk about with the person? How are you going to know if you care enough about the person to talk with them if you don't have a first initial conversation to actually keep your interest about that person in the first place? If I don't have a good first impression of the person, if I don't have a good first conversation, I'm just going to want to end it right there or just move on to the next person, because there's no actual incentive for me to continue talking about something that I don't really care about. But like a personal song, right? Everyone has a favorite song that they like really enjoy that's personal to them. I can talk about that song for hours personally for me. I can talk about the production, the lyrics, all the things I like about it. And if I can talk to someone about that, that's something we're both interested in, we both hold personally. That's why it matters. But again, just going back to that clarification, which I was talking about before, the point of information, the other information is still available on the profile. You're just being matched solely on the Spotify data. Just to clarify that. Also, they talked about this idea of how it's going to create like stereotypes and echo chambers. Not really. Like, yes, people could stereotype people listen to different music, like rap or country or something like that. But the point is you're not stereotyping, because the point is you're being matched with people who listen to the same music. So unless you're just stereotyping yourself, which I guess doesn't really have any real impact on the rounds, it doesn't really matter. Let's look at the second flash though. Why is Spotify uniquely better than something like a hobby? Because I bet they're going to get this in their next speech to talk about, okay, well, this doesn't prove anything. Like I could talk about my favorite movie, for example, or I could talk about my favorite type of car, or my favorite sports team. Like, I'm a big football fan. I could probably talk about my favorite sports team for hours. Why should we just talk about about that instead of Spotify. Here's exactly why. There's a few reasons. The first is that it's the most current, up-to-date stuff. Like both Torger and Isaac talked about, it's continuously updating as you listen to music, which means that the person gets to see essentially the most relevant current information that's possible. Because the thing is that it's data. This is the unique advantage of Spotify that has over any other possible thing. It's data. It's provable. It can't be faked or falsified or something like that. Why is that important? Because for one, people can lie about their hobbies, people can lie about their favorite movies. Like, if someone who likes a particular movie or something like that, or it's popular in a certain region, you can just put that as your preference, right? That doesn't mean you actually like it or enjoy it. The point is that the traditional methods rely on just buzzwords to get what you want, right? You put in the right preferences, you're going to get enough matches. But with Spotify, it's literally ingrained personally to you because it has to be, because it's actual raw data. It means that it can't change, it can be manipulated by you by just putting in a bunch of buzzwords of your preferences in order to get the best match. The other thing I just want to talk about at this point about Spotify, all their account switching stuff, it wasn't really addressed in the last speech. I think Porter pretty adequately refuted about the account switching and all that. Just to pull that window, that's not really an issue. It's only going to be your data in terms of relevancy. The last important thing, though, why Spotify is unique is the evolution of it, though. See, I can pick up a new hobby. Like, I just started golf like a year ago. It's pretty recent for me. Yes, I love golf, but that's a pretty new thing. I've only done it, only been taking lessons for a short amount of time. Meanwhile, my music taste dates back, 6 or 7 years of completely different taste as the years have gone along. It shows my evolution as a person. It shows my headspace also evolving as well, right? I'm going to listen to different music when I was younger than I am now, based on the experience I have, or the headspace I'm currently in, or the emotions I'm feeling, right? Your music reflects that, so it actually gives an evolving picture of you as a person, which is important if you're trying to start an initial conversation, because it tells you so much that you can prove about that person, because it's actual raw data. Let's look at the last point, though. Let's talk about the cultural aspect as well specifically, because this is essentially the largest reaching impact, and the last reason why Spotify is unique. Here's exactly why, for a few reasons. The first is this. If you put Spotify as the main matchmaking thing, you can no longer put hookups as your preference, right? Or things similar that are going to get to that goal, if you know what I mean. Maybe other buzzwords that lead to that same end. The point is that now that you can't manipulate your own preferences, it's impossible to have a guarantee that you're going to get a hookup out of the app. That means that people looking for more casual relationships don't use the app anymore because they can't manipulate it for those specific preferences to get that end. Instead, it's only based off their Spotify, which means that they can't guarantee a hookup out of any given conversation. That means that the people who actually want genuine relationships get to stay on the app and have the app more to themselves, which means that they actually get to talk with other people who want genuine relationships. Torger talked about the impacts of this. So when you have less people just having ready access to hookup culture, you have more stable relationships, more genuine families, people investing in their long-term futures, and even things such as extending as more stable families, less fatherless homes, etc. That's why I'm proud to propose.